So that's what $3 trillion looks like. $3 trillion in numerical form. How many zeros is that? 3, 6, 9, 12 zeros. That's a lot of money. And that's what Joe Biden wants to spend on infrastructure. By the way, Price is Right? Yeah. I don't know if the Price is right this time, including to a lot of Republicans and a lot of key Democrats. You're about to hear from Larry Summers, who was Treasury Secretary to Bill Clinton and head of the Economic Council under Barack Obama. Here's what he said about Joe Biden's spending plan.
I think this is the least responsible macroeconomic policies we've had in the last 40 years. What was kindling is now igniting. And I am much more worried that we'll have either inflation or we will have a pretty dramatic fiscal monetary collision.
Wow. And say what you will about Larry Summers. He understands economics, smart guy. We're joined now by Steve Forbes, another very smart man, chairman and editor-in-chief of Forbes Media, a one-time presidential candidate, and who knows, maybe a future presidential candidate. You know, I love that race, Steve. But first of all, what do you think of Joe Biden's $3 to $4 trillion infrastructure dreams?
Well, it's going to do two things. One, it'll eventually kindle inflation. Financing that $3 to $4 trillion mostly going to be done by printing money, and we know where that leads. The other thing is they call it an infrastructure bill, but only a small part of it is actually going to go for highways and airports and things like that. A lot of it is going to be taking huge resources, going for alternative energies, jeopardizing our energy independence, raising the price of energy, and also subsidizing massively electronic vehicles, having these electronic ports where you can gin up your automobile with more electricity. Did the federal government ever subsidize gasoline stations when the automobile rose up? No. Let the private sector sort this out. But a massive call on resources, Greg, and it's going to hurt the economy rather than help it. They think it's stimulus. It's actually going to be a depressant.
You know, when you and Larry Summers agree, I think Joe Biden should listen. I don't know if he's capable of listening. Who's putting together these kinds of plans? I mean, these are far left, radical, AOC type stuff. I guess we're looking at here.
Well, you hit it exactly. It is AOC, Green New Deal kind of stuff. Massively trying to transform this country without a real referendum on this, without any consensus, without getting a mandate from the voters. If you'd ask the voters, do we want policies that's going to double the price of gasoline, double the price of electricity if they follow through on this kind of thing? Most voters would have said, no way. And I take comfort that this plan to tax cars based on how many miles you drive, at least that went down, but there's a lot of other bad stuff in this stew.
Steve, you're in the media as well. How much of this is the media's fault? Not your fault, but, you know, in the old days, they were really worried about what a columnist, you know, at the Economist might say, or what the New York Times, you know, a smart guy there, and there are a couple, might say and bring up the points that you're making, and they just would be afraid to be called out, like you just called them out, like Larry just called them out. But now they just don't seem to care, and they just go ahead with it because media, I don't know, they don't pack the punch that they used to have. You know what I mean? Am I making sense at all?
Well, what we have here is these people on the far left don't even care, Greg, about the 2022 elections. They see this as a once-in-a-half-century opportunity to fundamentally remake the greatest country in the world, and they're going to drive it no matter what the consequences. Even if they lose in 2022, they figure if they pass this stuff now, a lot of it will be hard to repeal. There'll be a president who will veto at least for 2 more years, and we saw with Obamacare how difficult it was to finally get shed the worst of that. So, and then they revived it in this so-called stimulus bill. So, yeah, they're going for broke. They don't care about anything. They're just going to drive ahead, do anything, say anything to try to get this thing through.
By the way, you know, when I heard, infrastructure, what's wrong with infrastructure? I mean, I know infrastructure is crummy in America. Let's face it. I love America, but our roads are falling apart, especially here in the city. I think we got some pictures. Our airports, if you go to any airport anywhere in the world, it's probably newer, sleeker, better facilities than anything we've got. It's kind of depressing, actually, when you go to some of those airports. So we do need infrastructure. What if this were all about, you know, none of the weirdo gimmicks, none of that environmental stuff, but really all about rebuilding America? Could you handle $3 trillion?
Well, it wouldn't cost $3 trillion. It would cost a fraction of that. And what you do is you make grants on things like highways and bridge repair to the states, which know what needs to be done locally rather than a faraway bureaucracy. And let's keep in mind, the infrastructure that we're talking about is not private sector infrastructure. FedEx doesn't have a shortage of badly maintained airplanes and vehicles. They're private. They keep it up. This is government infrastructure, which is about 1/3 of infrastructure in this country. 2/3 is private sector, and they don't maintain it. And one of the reasons they don't is because they have these convoluted ways of getting permissions and licenses and approvals. So something that could have been done in 10 years now takes 10 years. So they got to clean that up. So, yeah, I'm all for removing those huge obstacles to infrastructure, and let's get it done the right way and involve the private sector. We saw with Operation Warp Speed, bringing the private sector, things can get done quickly and efficiently.
Right. The private sector, nothing like it. Wow. Steve Forbes, thank you. We're going to hit the music one more time as I want you to plug your flat tax proposal. If you don't mind, it was a great idea. Do your taxes on a postcard. What was your proposed rate, fixed rate?
Fixed rate of 17% after generous exemption for adults and for children. Family of 4, Greg, would pay no federal income tax on the first $52,000 of salary. That's what simplicity can do. Really help people who need the help.
Love it. And I could do the taxes for my entire family, not have to have my wife
and do it in 5 minutes.
In 5
at no
minutes.
cost.
Love it, Steve. A great idea someday, I hope. Steve Forbes from Forbes Media, thank you, sir, and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, where real news for real people.